Wednesday, everybody. My name is Elisha Watrous,
My name is Alex Watras.
My name is Esther Watrous.
And I'm Juji Watras.
and we're here to remind you what day it is. I was recently talking to a friend of mine, and she pointed out that we don't really explain what Pirate Wednesday is. And maybe that's just because we figured of the two listeners that we have, they both know the story of Pirate Wednesday. But, God forbid we actually end up having a third or fourth listener, they might not know the history behind it. And what's even worse is we like alluded to some few things in some earlier episodes about Pirate Wednesday, but we didn't explain ourselves. We were just like, oh, I didn't let Alex do Pirate Wednesday until I left, and so it ends up making it a lot more confusing. I figured in this episode we could start off by correcting that. So I'm just going to kind of talk about how Pirate Wednesday got started, and then I'd love to hear from you guys and kind of your personal experiences with it
Yeah.
as you carried it on. As far as Pirate Wednesday goes, essentially, it was the end of my freshman year, and I was talking to a few friends of mine, and we were all talking about how fun it would be if
Freshman
we all
year
came
of what?
high school. This was all high
Okay,
school.
you gotta
Thank
clarify.
you. You're right. Thank you, Esther. You're always so sweet.
No, this is
Yeah,
a high
sure.
school thing, not a college thing. It did not carry on to
No.
college.
No, it did not carry on to college. People asked me if I would, and I was like, no, I'm cool with it just being a high school thing. Don't get me. Actually, funny enough, I think it would have fit a lot better in college.
It would
In
have.
that, I don't think anybody would have noticed. Like, it would just. It's a very college thing to do. In high school, everyone's um, very self conscious and very insecure, and so to do something like this is a little out of the ordinary and a little more noticeable. But anyhow, so basically at the end of my freshman year of high school, me and some friends and I were talking about how awesome it would be to come in dressed up as something. It could have been ninjas or robots, or it really could have been anything, but we are just goofing around about this idea. And the thing you have to know about me as a person is when I get an idea in my head of something I find interesting, I do it. If I don't have a good reason not to, like if it's not going to harm somebody, if it's not breaking the rules, um, if the only thing that's keeping me from doing this thing is because it's strange or weird or different or it's just not done, that's not really a good enough reason for me not to do something. And so that happened to be the case with this initial idea. I also think high schoolers come up with a lot of interesting ideas, but they never really have the motivation to follow through with them, and that's also not really my shtick. I tend to, if I have an idea, I do it. So, over the following summer, between freshman and sophomore year of high school, I talked with some family and friends and kind of threw out the idea of coming and dressed up as something. Now, honestly, and completely, it could have been anything. It could have been Robot Friday or Ninja Thursday. It just so happened that most of the times when talking to people about this, I use the same example, which happened to be Pirate Wednesday. And so by the end of the summer, I kind of came to the conclusion that I was going to go into school dressed as a pirate on Wednesday. Now, I didn't know if this was going to be once in a lifetime thing, once a year, once a month, once a week. I really had no idea. I didn't really have a solid intention. I figured I'd kind of play that part by ear. Um, but the first day of sophomore year happens to be a Wednesday. So, first day back to school that year, I went to my bus stop in a pirate costume. Now, at the time, our neighborhood had a lot of kids. Probably the majority of the kids in our town that went to Mount Hope, or at least I would say not the majority because that sounds like a lot more, but at least the largest group together of kids that went to Mount Hope that lived in Warren tended to be in our neighborhood at the time. So we had a decent amount of kids there, and I come to the bus stop, long hair past my shoulders, beautiful hair. I had gray hair, but anyhow, um, and dressed in this really cheap iParty costume, pirate costume, with an eye patch and an earring and everything. and then a rubber duck on my shoulder, a little pirate rubber duck actually, which that in itself is a whole nother story on why it's a duck and not a parrot. But we'll get into that on some other episode. Anyhow, so I get to the bus stop, and mind you, I wasn't doing this for attention. I wanted to be a psychologist all throughout high school, and so I thought it would be an interesting social experiment as much as anything else. And so when I got to the bus stop, I expected some sort of human reaction. Just something. Like, oh, hey, why are you in a pirate costume? Just even a question. And I got nothing. Not even a glance. Not even not even like a weird sideways glance. It was just a normal day. He's just wearing any other clothes that normal people wear to high school. And so
what was the bus stop like around this time? Was it like, because I remember there were times when I'd wait for the bus in our group. There's that sort of like that awkward silence where everyone is just too tired to make conversation. Is that sort of what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, no, that's spot on, exactly what it was. Because it's also the first day back to school. So I mean, all summer you're not waking up early. So everybody's exhausted. Nobody really wants to go.
Yeah, no one wants to be there.
Yeah, no one's particularly excited. I don't know that there was really many freshmen at the bus, so we've all done high school already, so we're not particularly thrilled about the new experience. It's just a matter of like, this is what we have to do, so we got up early. Summer is officially over. This sucks. And so I'm at the bus stop and just nothing, and I'm like, all right, interesting. Maybe this is how my day is gonna go. And so the bus comes, and I get on the bus, and like I hear like a little bit of something, but for the most part it's almost exactly the same as it was at the bus stop. It was just nobody cared. Nobody gave a shit. And I was like, all right, cool. And again, like I wasn't doing this for attention. It just, I did expect some sort of response from it.
Possibly a negative attention.
Yeah, no, like it could have been negative, just like any sort of like, hey, you're in a pirate costume. What the hell is wrong with you? Just like anything, like the way I would respond if I saw somebody in a pirate costume, and just nothing. So I was like, all right, then I guess I'm gonna have a very boring day in a pirate costume at school. And so long bus ride to the school, and so we get there, and I get into school, and it's totally different. So I start walking down the hallway, and you can hear the conversations just stop mid-sentence. So you have like, oh man, I met this boy over the summer, and he was so cute, and we hung out at the beach the whole time, and then suddenly like, hey, is he wearing a pirate costume? Oh, what's up with the duck? Is that an eye patch? Is there something wrong with his eye? What's going on?
Glad you're entertaining Georgie.
Yeah, right? Is this like a theme day?
I'm sure the freshmen were probably the most confused.
Probably.
Yeah.
They're probably like, wait,
Yeah.
I didn't realize our mascot was a pirate.
I thought it was a husky.
Yeah, I thought it was a husky. Very confused. But yeah, so that was the more human response I expected. Like, not necessarily good or bad, just like, why? Like, I expected more people to question, why is this going on? And then whether it was positive or negative was a mixed bag, which I would also expect. But just the questioning something kind of peculiar, something different, is what I was initially expecting, and I didn't really get until I arrived at the school. So the rest of my day ended up going pretty good. Like, overall I got a pretty positive response from it. So much so that I decided that I would give a shot at just kind of trying it once a week. And so the following Wednesday, I dressed like a pirate as well and came in, and people seemed to enjoy it overall. I mean, you have some people who are like, what's with this weird kid? And understandably, it's not like a normal thing to do to come up dressed as a pirate. But yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised to see how many people who actually seemed to enjoy it. So eventually, like a couple weeks into this, I had this one kid who didn't seem to enjoy it. In fact, so much that he decided to start harassing me. And what you have to know about me is I'm very passive aggressive. I'll be patient, I'll be patient, I'll be patient, I'll be patient, and then out of nowhere you'll suddenly hit a point where all patience is gone and I snap. So this kid would come up to me every Wednesday, and he'd like steal the duck or say something sarcastic to me, and just because he felt like being a classic school bully. It was very dumb. And so one morning, I'm heading to Spanish class, and I hate Spanish class. I'm decent with grammar. I like vocabulary. Spelling, I'm terrible with. But in general, I'm not good in my own language. To then have to learn another language is just very painful. And so it was early in the morning, heading to Spanish class, a class I didn't want to go to. And I'm in the most congested part of the school. And I hear whispering behind me about somebody going to take my duck. And now, mind you, at this point, I'd been doing it for probably a couple months, and I had friends who would actually take my duck throughout the day and like do little doodles on it. And at the end of the day, I'd get like my duck back, and it'd have like little notes to me and little like tattoos on it and stuff. And so it was really cool. And so I thought I had heard my friend's voice. So for a moment, in this miserable time of being early in the morning, heading to Spanish class, I had this brief moment of happiness. And I think that's what really did it, is that I was upset and I had a moment of happiness, and then I was brought drastically down by the fact that it was this one kid. Yeah. So it was this one kid who snatched the duck from my shoulder. And mind you, I had it attached with Velcro because at this point I had like 6 or 7 of these, so I could switch them out depending on what mood I was in. I don't know. They're all pirate rubber duckies, slightly different, but I had different moods. Anyhow, so he grabs the duck and he just chucks it. He just chucks it as far as he could. And then he starts walking in the opposite direction. And I'm in the middle of this congested hallway, people all around, and I just snap. Just completely snap. And so I walk up behind him, grab the back of his flannel shirt. He was this gross hippie kid. And he turns his face around, and just as he does, I punch him square in the face. Now, mind you, I don't normally fight. I'm like 14 at this point, and this kid is like a month away from being 18. I'm in a pirate costume with my backpack on, an eye patch on, my long hair down past my shoulders, and he looks like some sort of like hippie lumberjack crossbreed of a human being. And just as I go to punch him in the face, I kid you not, it happened in slow motion. Like, I could see my fist going towards his face, and I'm thinking to myself in slow motion, what the hell am I doing? And I just punch him square in the face. And then from there, the rest is a bit of a blur. From friends who were around who saw the fight, apparently got some more punches in. I don't really remember much more of it beyond that, other than one special little moment. So much of the time in the fight, like, he'd grab me by the hair, and he actually was slamming my head against the cement wall of the school. And what you have to know, if you've never been in a fight like this before, you have so much adrenaline in you, you don't feel it. Like, not really. It's more like a dull thud. It's not the sharp pain that you would normally feel if you didn't have all that adrenaline running through you. But in that moment, while he had my hair, I grabbed him by the ponytail for just a moment. And mind you, my head is currently being hit against a cement wall. And I think to myself, I'm not a girl. I don't pull hair. And so I let go of his hair. Now, I would have had the equal advantage that he had of holding onto my hair. And retrospectively, it doesn't matter if you're a girl or a guy. And if anyone's ever followed Bruce Lee, his philosophy tends to be do what it takes to win the fight. But at the time, that was my thinking, and so I let go. And so we continued fighting, and then a friend of mine, who's this like tough Irish kid, came and ended up breaking up the fight. I didn't even notice it. I was a little out of it by the end of it. But the fight broke up, and I was like, all right, time to go to Spanish class. So I was obviously bleeding a little bit at this point.
Yeah,
so
I'm fine. I just fought a kid. I'm just gonna go to Spanish class now.
Yeah, no, that was my thinking. I was like, all right, I'm good. let's go to Spanish class. So I head to the water bubbler, kind of wash off a little bit, and then head off to class. I'm like, crap, I'm late. And so one of our teachers, I was still out of it for sure. Who knows if I was concussed or not. But one of my teachers, I found out later on, saw me with the blood on me and thought it was part of the costume and felt so bad about it afterwards. She, like, for a month straight, she apologized to me off and on about it because she just felt terrible. And funny enough, she's one of those teachers that was always a bit of like a hard ass. I always liked her because I could kind of see through the exterior of things. But well, actually, I think most of you guys would know her. It was Miss Leonard, actually.
Oh man, I was thinking it was her. Oh my god.
Yeah, it was, and she felt so bad.
Those are the funny stories about Miss Leonard, but we'll just keep that for.
Yeah, we'll bring those up in other times. Like all the time, she would show me things on eBay because she was a big eBay fan. But anyhow, so she felt super bad about that. But I found that later on. But another teacher who did not think it was fake blood pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, are you okay?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, I got into a bit of a fight, but I'm late for Spanish class. I really need to go." And she's like, "No, no, we're going to the nurse right now." And I was like, "No, I'm late. We can just take care of that later." And she's like, "Nope, we're going to the nurse." And I'm like, "All right." So we head to the nurse, and the nurse isn't there. And I was like, "Oh, see, she isn't here. I'll just go to Spanish class. You can grab me later." And she's like, "Nope, you wait here." So she went. She got the nurse. The police were called. The nurse checked me out. And my mom got called, and so she came in and she's freaking out, and she's like, I want to press charges. I'm like, no, because come to find out, this kid already had like 3 strikes on him, and then he was only a couple months away from being 18, so not only could he have been potentially charged as an adult, but like he could have been kicked out of school. And for me, I didn't want to ruin his life. I just wanted to punch him in the face. Like there's a wide gap between those two events. Like I was fine. I got my punch in. I was good. I really just had no anger towards him anymore. And mom was intent about like trying to press charges and everything. And so I think it was a combination between the fact that since I threw the first punch, it would go on my permanent record as well. So that is if we press charges. And so it was that combined with my insistence that no, I don't want to ruin his life. I just wanted to punch him in the face. That kind of really kept him from getting in any more trouble than I got into, which was a couple weeks suspension. Which, mind you, out of school suspension is not a punishment. For any of those in the academic world out there, I'm sorry, but that's not a punishment. I got all my homework sent to me. And then I got to relax at home and not have to deal with going to school. Not a punishment. In college, God, if I missed even 2 classes, I'd be crying because there would be whole sections of things you didn't know. But in high school, no. At 2 weeks gone, it's a wonderful thing. During these 2 weeks I had off, I thought to myself, so what happens every time a superhero gets defeated? When Optimus Prime gets defeated, comes back, new badass costume. Spider-Man, when he gets defeated, comes back, new badass costume. When Superman gets defeated, comes back, new badass costume. And it occurred to me, it was time for a new badass costume. So our poor mom, she honestly was such a great sport about this whole thing. She even helped me go to like Salvation Army and picked up some interesting various pieces, and loosely inspired by some of Jack Sparrow's costume from the classic Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which were out sort of around the time that I was doing some of this. We put together a much better costume, and so sure enough, the very first day I'm back from my suspension happens to be a Wednesday. And so the very first day I'm back in school, I am in a pirate costume again. And it's honestly just like the first day all over again, except this time people are whispering to themselves like, hey, Trump's totally going to beat him up. What is he doing? I can't believe he's back in a pirate costume again. Oh, man, they're totally going to get in a fight again. But you know what? sure enough, other than like one little comment he had made at one point, um, just like a sarcastic comment. Other than that, he left me completely alone. I think he understood that even though I might not win the fight, and trust me, I definitely wasn't winning that fight, but even if I wouldn't win the fight, I would at least put up a fight. And for him, I think he understood that it wasn't worth it to pick on somebody that would fight back.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I end up continuing on with it. Everyone still really seemed to enjoy it. And then over the summer between sophomore and junior year, I kind of had like a personal identity crisis, which if you can't count dressing like a pirate as a personal identity crisis, I don't know what you can. But I had another one, and I cut my hair and was feeling really self-conscious about whether or not girls liked me. And I understood, at least in my teenage brain, enough that being in a pirate costume may just scare away a couple girls, maybe most of them, maybe all of them. When I came back the following year for my junior year, for the first I think month, I didn't dress like a pirate, and I just had so many people who were so kind of like upset or bummed out about it, and so many people who were like, "No, you should keep going with it." That sure enough, I end up just going right back into it and dressing up again, and I did it for the rest of my junior year, and then all of my senior year. And actually that first summer, I think between sophomore and junior, before I stopped at the beginning of junior year, I actually did it throughout the summer as well. And I believe I also did it throughout the summer between junior and senior year. And then obviously towards the end, people were asking whether or not I would carry it on into college, and I'm like, no, I'm okay with keeping it as a high school thing. Just kind of this moment in time where I did this thing. And so when I was a senior, Alex was a freshman. And I mentioned that it'd be kind of cool if he carried on with it. Because as Pirate Wednesday was originally intended actually to be a holiday for everybody. Everybody was supposed to be able to dress up for a Pirate Wednesday. And then, as I mentioned before, teenagers don't really follow through with things. So it just turned into just me doing it. And occasionally I'd have somebody who'd wear like an eye patch. There was one time where one of the janitors were wearing an eye patch, and I thought it was in solidarity, and then come to find out later it was not, and it was just that he had something wrong with his eye. And I think I made some sort of comment to him.
Oh no!
Wait, that's the janitor with the blind eye.
He has like a glass eye, I think.
Yep. Yeah.
His name is Mike.
Yeah. So sorry, Mike. That was awkward, but yeah. So when I was a senior, I didn't let Alex do it as a freshman. I don't really know why. Me and Alex were always so close in age. I always got very touchy about when he would do the same things as me.
You were always very sensitive about that kind of thing. You never wanted us to wear the same shoes or to match in any way.
It comes in two parts.
Same.
One, because when we were little, Mom would dress up both of us like we were twins. And so I wanted to kind of move past that. And then the second half of it is, as a teenager, you don't know what the hell you're doing most of the time. And so then to have the responsibility of somebody a little bit younger than you looking up to you and kind of following along with what you're doing as if you do know what you're doing is kind of overwhelming. And so I pushed against that because it's like, no, I don't know what I'm doing. Don't follow this because I'm probably doing it wrong. And then if you do it as well, then we both are doing it wrong, and it puts a spotlight on how badly I'm doing life right now.
So
where definitely doesn't come across.
So where my Pirate Wednesday story starts is actually, it was in my freshman year, but it was only that one Wednesday. I think it was like around Halloween or Spirit Week or something like that. And I came to school with a pirate costume. I remember being met with some resistance there because I decided to do it without your permission or whatnot. But
probably. So sorry about that.
And I think I remember even stealing your duck or something in the middle of like passing, and you got upset at me or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sorry for that.
At least he didn't punch you in the face.
Yeah, I don't think it was going to turn into tussle. He wasn't that angry. He just was like, He was just upset. I think you know I think what I did was I purposely sewed like a Velcro patch onto my shoulder without him knowing, and I like I like intentionally just left it like empty because I knew that during the day I was gonna steal his duck and put it on my shoulder instead.
So you plotted it the whole time.
Yeah, it was planned specifically to do that sort of thing. So I kind of a little kind of nice little tied up story here. So yeah, so that was like my first day. And unlike Elisha's first day's experiences, he had sort of marked the territory in this. And again, like it was supposed to be a participant sort of holiday. You know, Pirate Wednesday is just like, hey, every Wednesday anybody can join in. What I have to say is probably one of the biggest differences between the era of Elisha versus my era when I spent so when I first started I was a sophomore in high school, like officially started, so it was like day one that. And what I noticed really quickly was that people were a lot more attuned to actually participate in it when I started it. I don't know if it was just maybe the kids that were growing up in my class, or if it was like the younger generation below me, but everyone seemed to kind of enjoy the concept, enjoy the idea. And they didn't think it was too weird at that point because, you know, the older kids, they already knew about it, they were already adjusted to it, and the younger ones seemed to be more accepting of that sort of thing, unless like Jerome. Are we saying his name?
I accidentally already said him earlier.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Should we bleep that out?
Yep.
I don't know. It doesn't really matter. We don't know his last name. Anyway,
Doesn't really
Jerome character. I don't know. Whatever. There was less characters like that who were more like the bully stereotype, who were like, I don't really like the way he dresses. I'm gonna be mean to him. There definitely was not. I never once really gotten into any situations where I got into a fight because of the pirate costume. Although there were some interesting times where funny things did happen to me while I was wearing the costume, but they're completely unrelated to the costume. It sort of just became a second skin, you know. It didn't really, you know, you just, oh, okay, what am I wearing today? It actually, for me, because of my personality, I tend to not want to have to think about a lot of stuff. And waking up in the morning on Wednesday, knowing that you had to wear the pirate costume, made it easier to decide what to wear. So that I always liked that part of it. There's also another aspect to this whole thing was that once the torch was passed down, there were most of the time there'd be portions of the costume that would also be passed down. The girls can kind of elaborate on that a little bit more, but I'm trying to think of like what Elisha would have passed down to me, but maybe like a belt or maybe like a small piece of clothing or something like that. But usually you tend to try to like create your own costume to make it yours, you know, like, so there wasn't just this like passing down of just one suit, you know what I mean, like, here, now you wear the suit sort of thing. But there was a little bit of that going on. But like I was saying, there's in the era where I did it, I feel like I definitely got a lot more participation. It didn't stick around long enough to be like always happening. But I do remember a period of time where for like a good few months, me and several of my friends would meet at the cafeteria for like a breakfast, and it was probably like me and like 5 or 6 other people who, ranging from full-on pirate costume to maybe just a hat or an eye patch or just like maybe the jewelry with skulls and crossbones and stuff like that. But we'd all end up sort of correlating and meeting at breakfast time. You know, like the kids that really clung to it were, you know, this odd bunch, and a lot of them I became friends with sort of because they decided they were interested in wearing the pirate costume, not because I was friends with them prior to this. So it was very interesting to see like what sorts of characters were they really just held on to this idea, and they just thought it was the coolest thing, you know. And I don't know, I appreciated that, you know, Elisha broke the way for this. He made the way for this to happen in the first place, because again, you know, like there's nowhere else like in high school people are so like conscious of like the way they look, that there's not many opportunities to really kind of break free of that like that sort of grip, So I think I had a lot of fun with it. I didn't have any bad experiences like Elisha did. I just kind of had fun with it, I was like the sort of energetic, weird, funny pirate, and people seem to really like that. So then it was my senior year, and there was a little bit of I had people asking me, because a lot of people didn't know that I had younger siblings and that I had 2 younger sisters. And so a lot of people were asking me, they're like, oh, so what's going to happen? Like, what is this going to be it? Is this going to be the end of Pirate Wednesday? Like, even some teachers who didn't know were asking me. And I said, oh, no, like I have a younger sister. I have 2 younger sisters, and they're coming up. So, I mean, if they want to do it, I'm going to try to see if we can make it work, see if they'll actually do it. And yeah, so then it kind of like fell onto Esther. I can't remember if I helped Esther get her pirate costume or Juji, and I don't remember. So you guys are gonna have to take the story from this.
I think you helped both of us.
Yeah,
I think mostly I just need someone to like drive me to the store. Esther, what was your experience?
So, for me, Pirate Wednesday was, kind of not a serious thing. And I kind of just went on a whim and decided to take it on because Alex and Elisha were like, oh, like what if you continued it wearing the pirate costume? And they're like, oh, it's a commitment. You gotta do it every week. And I was like, all right, fine, sure.
Can I just say real quick that I think we can all agree that we were surprised that Esther did it?
Yes, definitely very surprised.
100%. And just not to break up Esther's story, but just real quick. So I'm super dorky. Alex was more popular with people, but he's also very dorky. And Juji is as well very dorky. All 3 of us were very awkward teenagers. We're kind of even awkward adults. Esther, on the other hand, apparently she was awkward in middle school. I don't even remember that. But other than that, she's always dressed very nice. She's always looked very pretty. And even if she didn't have self-confidence, everyone around her thought she did. And so we just, being so stylish, like always and always having a knack for it, we just did not at all expect that she would be willing to do something like this. Juji, we just assumed. We'd be like, Juji's just as nerdy as us, just as weird as us.
I was excited.
And this isn't criticism. I think Esther, honestly,
throughout entire middle school, I was like, it's almost happening.
I think Esther,
it's almost there. I'm almost to high school. I can do this.
Yeah, Juji was waiting for it. Esther, on the other hand, was like, I don't know. But, I got to give her credit for doing it. She deserves an award because I feel like out of all 4 of us, she must have been the one who had to kind of, like say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? Like for Juji, it was a no-brainer at that point.
I think that when I did it, it was kind of like a starting all over again kind of thing. Because when Alex did Pirate Wednesday, he followed in your footsteps. So it wasn't like as big as a thing as it was when Elisha started Pirate Wednesday. But once Alex was done with it, and then I went to school, it was like a huge thing again. Not only because I'm like a younger sister and a sibling by like 4 years, and no one expected me to even exist. But like I had to. Like, I went to school with everyone who came up with me with middle school. So, like, the kids in my grade had no idea what to expect as, like, a freshman. But also, like, everyone above me didn't even know that I existed. And then, like, would find out, like, eventually as I started the school year. So, it was kind of like a new thing when I started doing Pirate Wednesday. Because once Juji came into the school the year after, they're like, oh yeah, your sister does that, but everyone sort of like knew it was going on.
No, can I jump in real quick? I totally understand what you're saying because when you're a freshman, you usually take a lot of courses with other freshmen. There isn't a lot of intermingling between grades, like there are like when in later years, when you have more electives and whatnot. So I can definitely understand why the majority of the time, other than class passing, you probably were around your peers that you grew up with, and none of them knew like what Pirate Wednesday was, So they probably all were like, "What the heck are you doing?"
Yeah, it was interesting.
How did that develop though through like getting to like the second year, so sophomore year? Like how did that change?
Well, first of all, when I started doing Pirate Wednesday, I got like mixed reactions. I think the only people who really cared that much were teachers from our school. And it was also interesting too because I took a lot of classes where I'd sit in the class and all the kids would be staring at me because they're like kids I knew from middle school, and then the professor would be like, "Oh, you're doing the pirate costume," and kind of like showed the class that this is socially acceptable now, because like a lot of my teachers
fantastic.
in high school, they knew about Pirate Wednesday. Some of them were like huge fans of it. So when they're like, "Oh, dude, it's so cool that you're doing this," all the kids in my class were like, "Oh, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I love Pirate Wednesday now." So that was interesting because I think like a lot of people thought it was weird. But I was a weird kid. Like I know Elisha
Well,
said.
you also just sit there with like this really mad face, and they're kind of scared of you in a little bit because of the facial expression. So they're like, you're that, and you're also in a pirate costume, and they're like, what is happening?
But I'm not. Okay, here's the thing. Generally, I wasn't I was like a quiet kid in classes, and if you weren't part of my friend group, you didn't really like think much of me. Like I didn't come off as rude or like unfriendly to people. I was just like a quiet person. Like people would just like people who have never been my friend would probably just say like, "Oh, she was just like quiet, hung out with like really geeky people," or I don't know. But it's kind of like what Georgie is saying isn't the majority of the school when they first saw me, especially like people who didn't know me at all.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't relate to it at all.
Mm.
But I did have like an issue. It was mostly with guys. They would come up to me and they'd ask me if I like hated them or was planning like their murder or something. And I would say, no, it's just my face, just my face when I look at you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for a moment there, it sounded like you were saying because of the pirate costume.
No.
You're in a pirate costume. Are you gonna murder me? Obviously, you meant just because of your death stare.
Was there anything else to your
happened.
experience, Esther, that you want to mention?
Alicia's original question was how it kind of changed during sophomore year. And by that time, like, everyone knew, so, and, like, a lot of people knew who I was. It just got easier because every
And
year...
then also I was doing it too, so...
Gigi started doing it, so she, like, but even, like, the underclassmen were like, "Oh, okay, this is the thing," and it wasn't really a big deal, to them, but, like, every year, it's like you kind of had to figure it out, like, that there's pirates in your school, like, people who dress up, like, in weird costumes and stuff, and it's not even just, like, I don't know, Pirate Wednesday kind of sparked, like, other things to happen, too, and
It
I was
did,
also a
even in my
theater
time
kid,
little bit,
so
but-
sometimes I would, like, just leave the theater room in a costume, or my hair would be weird, and I'd just be too lazy to, I don't know, look acceptable after class. I just kind of like, I'll walk to class with, like, this pigtail on top of my head, or like, I don't know, this long gown, or some weird costume.
See, when I got there, people were used to me being really strange. like,
Gigi used
dressing
to
as-
crochet animal hats.
Okay, no. So this starts in second grade. When we went on a field trip to Plymouth Plantation, and I dressed as a pilgrim on the field trip. But apparently, because like some girl came up to me in high school and she thought I was really cool for doing that or something. But she also said that she remembered the day the field trip was like postponed. So I wore it to school that day that it was postponed, so we didn't actually go. And then I wore it again when we actually went.
So you actually you rocked it as a pilgrim before you even rocked it as a pirate.
Yeah, and then in middle school, I would always wear like weird headbands or just weird hats or stuff, and like people just were used to be just being weird. I don't know, they were used to it. Also, my class just seemed a little more chill about things. Yeah, I didn't really have much problems with it. At the same time, there was a guy dressing as a kilt, and I think there was before when you guys were going to school, right?
Yeah.
No, off and on. Even when I started it, off and on, there was little offshoots. There was a couple people who were like, "Oh, I'm gonna come in dressed up as a ninja," because around my time there was this big thing between pirates and ninjas. So there were apparently you were either on one team
Yeah.
or the other.
Apparently,
and then-
you're on
and-
the pirate team.
Yeah, and then like in the random mix of things, occasionally you'd have a guy who was doing like kilt stuff. Like even with my time there, and for some reason that's still kind of weirdly carried on off and on.
Yeah,
like,
there was always
throughout
somebody
all
with
four
a
of
kilt,
us.
Yeah.
but all completely
so there
unrelated.
was-
Though they just felt like wearing
Yeah,
a kilt to
completely
high
unrelated.
school. But I think that's the funny
Well,
thing
yeah,
is
'cause in-
the Pirate Wednesday kind of opened the door for like weird things like that. Because like normally, you know, if that hadn't happened, you know, if there wasn't a Pirate Wednesday, like a kid coming in with a kilt would be like a once you know what I mean, once and never again thing, or you know what I mean. It would be like, oh, that kid's
Mhm.
weird, you know, and then just once and never again. But
Yeah, I think our school was a lot more used to costumes by then.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that comparatively, just like how compared to the other three of us, Esther is the more normal one, or at least comes across that way. The same thing with the costumes.
I think Alex comes across pretty normal outside of home.
Yeah, so I guess Alex's friend Adam wore a kilt every Wednesday or something, and then some other kids started.
yeah, I
wearing a
wish
kilt
I
every
knew his
Wednesday.
name. I knew it at some point, but
His name is Colin.
oh, Colin. Yep,
Colin.
Oh,
that's it.
Yeah, and then his little brother, who I ended up being friends with, wore a kilt every Wednesday.
You went on a date with him?
Yeah, let's just talk about.
Oh, Colin.
Um,
Oh, they were brothers. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so that was cool. It was also fun because we were on math team together, and like the math meets would always be on a Wednesday, and so we'd go to like Portsmouth High in these weird clothing.
It shouldn't
I
be
guess there's
called a
not
math meet. It should
much
be called a
else.
pirate meet.
Well, except it was just me in the pirate costume, but it was really funny because one of the math meets, they had their spirit week, so they were in costumes, and I was just in my costume just because it was just Pirate Wednesday.
That probably threw them off a little bit.
Yeah. So I remember the first couple of years, I tried wearing like a skirt with my pirate costume, and I had like net tights, but then I was like, this is really annoying to wear, especially the net tights. So I eventually just ended up wearing like pants. I also like figured like actual female pirates disguise themselves as men anyways. So,
True, very true.
very
so
true.
I kind of, for my senior year, I got, or maybe even my junior year, but I got inspiration from Mary Read and Anne Bonny, which were like famous female pirates, for like what my pirate costume was gonna look like. So then I was graduating, and it was Pirate Wednesday was gonna end, and I actually found a freshman to carry it on the next year, and apparently this is what I heard, she and like a few other people actually kept started doing it last year.
Oh.
And yeah, except they all stopped after a couple weeks, probably just kind of gave up on it because, you know, kids don't.
Yeah, you shouldn't have picked a freshman.
don't-
You
they
should have
don't
picked like
carry-
a sophomore or something.
Well, like the person that I picked carried it on the longest. She actually did it for like half the year,
oh.
but
wow.
I guess she like stopped at one point. I don't know. I didn't really. I heard this from like a secondary or even tertiary like person, so it wasn't really like source. So it wasn't
Yeah.
really. I don't really know exactly what happened.
Well, she's still in high school now. You
But
need to message her.
but she's not doing it anymore as
Yeah.
far as I know. So it
So what does that
almost-
mean?
it
As far
kinda
as we
just-
know, Pirate Wednesday has been around for 11 2.5 years then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if we count the last pirate kid there in Mount Hope High School, then we can say 11 and a half years. But even if we just count our immediate family, that's 11 straight years of always having at least one pirate kid in Mount Hope High School, which is crazy. Way, way, way beyond anything I had initially imagined when I had first started out with this. And so, like, two little anecdotes. One that I wanted to mention earlier, but I didn't want to cut you guys off, about costuming. I have to say, hands down, both my sisters looked way, way, way better in pirate costumes than me and Alex ever did. We always kind of looked dorky. Like, even with my new, like, upgraded pirate costume, I was still dorky.
Alex looked pretty cool sometimes.
Okay, so people didn't recognize I was in a pirate costume. There were some people that by senior year, they were in my class and they were like, "Wait, you've been dressing up as a pirate this whole time? I thought that's just what you wore. Like that was just your style or something."
You just had an eccentric style. Exactly, because you both end up being so fashionable about it. And I didn't really have a sense of fashion until like a couple years into college. Now I tend to dress nice, but in high school, I mean, my normal attire, if I wasn't wearing a pirate costume, was saying t-shirts, blue jeans, and mismatched shoes. So I wasn't exactly the picture of fashion, and that kind of carried over into my pirate costume as well. But you two always kind of had a really good knack for it. And even you had kind of alluded to it before. From year to year, you would kind of do some subtle changes to your costume and make improvements and change some things around. Once I had my second costume, other than like occasionally adding a little jewelry or some rings or whatnot, which I guess would be jewelry as well, I didn't do much changing to my costume. It just kind of stayed fairly the same throughout the whole time I did it. And then the second thing I wanted to mention was I had the opportunity after graduating college to do some substitute teaching. And one of the semesters I did substitute teaching happened to be the first semester that Juji was in college. So
Yeah.
I was actually at Mount Hope that first year afterwards, and it was a very, very weird experience going back and like.
Did you see anyone in a pirate costume while you were there?
So I didn't. I also, one of the weeks I was working there was during Spirit Week, and so it just so happened so I worked at all kind of the schools in this district, and including Mount Hope, and I intentionally tried not to take days like Wednesdays because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I hadn't really decided if I would go in dressed as a like 25-year-old dude in a pirate costume as a substitute teacher.
You should have done
I
it,
like,
man.
well, I sort of did though.
I feel a lot of them would understand, but
So
All of
but some
them.
it
of
happened.
would be confused.
Well, definitely the teachers. Anyhow, I don't know about the students. But so basically, what happened was I accidentally took a Wednesday at Mount Hope because, as I said, I normally try to avoid it. I would try to work at other schools on Wednesdays, and so I accidentally did. And oddly enough, it happened to be Spirit Week, so it definitely wasn't as eccentric as my normal pirate costume was, but what I wore was more pirate inspired. So like I had like a couple like buttons unbuttoned on my collar, and I had like my shirt was a little more poofy, and I had kind of like my boots kind of showing more, and just it wasn't full on pirate costume, but it was heavily pirate costume inspired for the day. So there's a little nod to it. I don't know that anybody necessarily picked up on
What
it.
a
They might have just
missed
thought I was dressing weird.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
well.
It might have been too subtle.
It probably was, but I don't know. I still sort of count it. I
You were
suppose.
scared. You
Um,
hadn't done it in so long, and you were
My f-
scared.
I know. You're right. All right, fine. I was scared.
My
I was a
friends were
chicken.
messaging me. "Oh, your brother's my substitute teacher today."
Oh yeah. No, I got a lot of like kids. They're like, oh, so you're Juji's older brother. I'm like, yep. This is weird. This is really weird.
It was really funny.
But But yeah, so
Hey, I think
that.
you know what I think would be a really cool idea, and we don't have to do it soon,
What?
but we should do it at some point. Is we should get that girl, the last pirate from
Mhm.
Mount Hope, to come on our podcast, and we'll like do a little interview.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Like to see like what her little experience
Yeah,
was
I'll
with
see what
it.
I can do. Should probably also ask her like what made her stop. But
Well, no, just kind of like ask, see if she would like to do a little interview type of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause
I really would
having
like
done
to
it for
hear
a few
her.
months, that's
I would really like to hear her story. I don't know how you know her, but I would like to hear like, I mean, coming from a point of view where yeah, like there are going to be fewer and fewer people who understand what's going on. I mean, the teachers know what's up, but like student wise, and then the fact that there's not this backing of like, oh, my older brother did it, so I can do it kind of thing. So I'd really be
Yeah.
interested
Yeah.
to
Well,
see like why and when she stopped, or like what caused her to even do it for half a year. You know what I mean? Like what gave her the
yeah, but we were in the same clubs. That's how I knew her. We were in the
Oh.
same clubs.
Hmm.
I don't think I shared any classes or like anything else, saw her anywhere else. But like it was mostly like after school, like I'd see her, either math team or GSA.
Well, she was a she was a freshman when you were a senior, is what you were saying.
Yeah, she wasn't an
Okay.
incoming freshman. Yeah,
Yeah.
so she just did it like half her sophomore year.
Well, I think that's about as
Very
much time as I have.
yeah. No, I think that kind of
I think it wraps the
summarizes,
story up pretty well.
our Pirate Wednesday experience. So, without further ado, I'd like to thank our mom and Uncle Richie for listening as always, our two loyal listeners. And then Esther, want to let the people at home know where they can find us and how they can send in questions and suggestions.
You can find us on Twitter at Pirate Wednesday, Instagram Pirate Wednesdays, Facebook Pirate Wednesdays, YouTube Pirate Wednesdays. Try to rate and subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, and SoundCloud.
What's the best way for them to send in listener questions?
Email
Or Twitter.
Or
or
Twitter.
Twitter. At Pirate Wednesday, and Twitter is the only one with no S.
As always, I like to try to promote some sort of friend or local artist or family member who has a particular creative project or artistic skills. And this week, I'd like to actually promote a good, very, very old friend of mine, Emily Weiger. Emily Weiger is a plant enthusiast and a storyteller who likes working with dark themes and dark humor and putting them into lighthearted illustrations. She also really likes talking about teeth and Henry Cotton. She does a lot of commission work, as well as she has a number of original pieces up on her website, as well as prints that she has for sale. You can actually find any of her work at her website, which is emilyweigert.com. That's EMILYWEIGERT.com. You can also follow her on Tumblr, and with that, she often posts updates on what would normally go on her website anyhow. You can also see all the daily, almost daily doodles that she tends to do, and some of her more interesting work. You can also contact her for any commission work, or if you have any questions about some of her pieces, at Emily Weigert at montserrat.edu. So that's EMILY Weigert, WEIGERT at Montserrat. So that's MONTSERRAT.edu. And again, a really, really cool person, a lot of really interesting work. She does a lot of really cool stuff with floral designs, but some of my favorite stuff of hers actually tends to be the pieces where it's a very playful illustration, but has a lot of a darker, sort of twisted element to it. And regardless of whether you're interested in supporting the arts and buying some of her pieces, or you just want to see some really cool artwork, I definitely recommend you checking out her stuff on Tumblr, which again was emilyweigert.tumblr.com to follow her on Tumblr. Juji, you want to sign us off?
Don't forget to shave your belly with a rusty razor.